Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I have virtually in front of me Anna Jones. She is the Everything Love Coach, and I'm so excited to get into today's conversation. Anna, welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for having me on here. We connected a long time ago, and then finally we're doing this recording. So I'm very grateful that we didn't do it back then, because there are so many things that I can talk about now that I wouldn't have been able to talk about then. So perfect time.
I love it. It's always perfect timing. I definitely believe in that. There's nothing a coincidence in this life, for sure. So anyways, Anna, the first question I would love for you to answer, it's a 3-part question I ask all of my guests. It's to introduce yourself by sharing who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Okay. Those are very profound, and, we could probably talk about this for hours, but who I am. So I like to define myself as a multifaceted woman. And I think the go-to is usually to tell people like what we do, but what we do isn't actually who we are. So I like to be very, very clear about that. Like, that's not who I am. That's what I do. And I love what I do because it is an extension of who I am, right? Because I am in the personal development world, and I take my work very seriously, so much that I practice everything that I tell my clients to do. So that is very, very, very important. And then the second one was what I did.
So who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do what you do.
Okay, perfect. What I do. So what I do is I work with individuals. I used to be focused mostly on women, but now I've also extended my services out to men, because I feel like it is still a very underserved space with men. I think there's being a lot of blame and attacking, which we'll talk about more about, like, the responsibility that we all have with our emotions, and how I just think it's really unfair that we're blaming it on the opposite gender or on another gender in this world that we live in, because, that really takes us further away from our reality and how we are putting the energy into it to create it. So that was something that was really important to me. And so what I do is I accompany individuals down this journey of rediscovering themselves. That is the best way that I can put it. And we're so disconnected from love. We're so disconnected from our essence of who we truly are. So it's a really beautiful opportunity for them to explore what it's like to be them. And to not take themselves so seriously, to not take what they do so seriously, because if they lost everything that they had, who would they be, right? So it's really reconnecting them to their value and everything that they truly are, not by their material possessions or what they've done. So it's a beautiful journey of coming back to themselves. And then why I do it, I really think I have this belief that we do what we do because at the end of the day, we're on a healing journey ourselves. And so we're on this constant subconscious, conscious, or both, whether you're aware of it or not, journey of really trying to heal ourselves in the best possible way. So I truly believe, what I really love to see is, I love seeing people just kind of rise up into their own being, right? Back into that remembrance, into that place of remembrance, and just knowing, like, this is who I am meant to be. This is who I am. I love that process of watching them come back. But I also know that that is a reflection of me, because I have yet to find a client that I've worked with that isn't going through something that I already went through, that isn't going through something that I'm currently going through, or isn't going through something that a week later, I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. So it's kind of like all the past, the present, and the future wrapped in this dynamic. So it's so much more deep than what we actually think sometimes, the why we do what we do. But that is my perception.
I love that. So I feel like it can be really hard and sometimes confusing to figure out who we are and what we are meant to do, because I feel like we live in a world of titles. And so how would you advise someone getting clarity on, maybe they're like, I don't know my purpose, I don't feel aligned in my purpose. So what type of exercises or strategies do you help with clients to help them get more clear and like stand in conviction of, this is who I am and this is how I show up and I'm proud of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was going to say accountability. So I think what a lot of people struggle with is doing it by themselves. Find a community, find a coach, find somebody that you trust, hire them, work with them. Maybe, I don't know if you're like, no, I don't want to X, Y, and Z, fine, whatever, but find something that works for you and find something that will help you feel supported, because I think that's the number one issue why we don't do the things that we want to do, why we are constantly rejecting our dreams, our goals, our desires, something that's bigger for us, that's out there. It's like waiting for us, but we're just like, no, I'm too scared to go out there because what if I fail? And I think that that's one of the problems, right? With like the titles and things, like once you have the title, it's like, you can't mess it up. You can't do this. You can't do that. Like people are going to judge you. And we live in a very judgmental society where and I honestly, I'm so grateful that I was never part of the corporate world, because I really don't fit in the corporate world. There's a lot of like ass kissing and a lot of gossip and a lot of things. And I mean, I'm not saying that all corporate is like this, but the majority of the experiences that I've heard from friends in corporate world is like that. A lot of time wasted in like the meeting about the meeting about the meeting. And then they're like, dude, I'm truly only here for the money. I've heard that, like, I'm only here for the financial security because like, I can't get anything done. Like I can't go beyond this point. So man, again, such a deep question, because the response, I don't think is just one thing, but I definitely feel like finding people who you resonate with is super important. And with my clients, we go through a series of questions, and there's a lot of journaling. There's a lot of introspection. There's a lot of self-awareness, and there's a lot of deciding. So I'm not the type of coach that's like, yeah, you've got this, go, go, go. And then it's like, boom. No, I'm like on top of my clients. I'm like, hey, you made a promise to yourself, and I hold them super accountable, and I hold them to the highest standards of integrity and commitment. And this doesn't mean that like, if they have a moment where they're like feeling ashamed or whatever, I'm like, no. It's like, there is a lot of self-compassion. There can be a lot of self-forgiveness, a lot of self-love in this process of commitment, because once you commit to yourself, to the discipline of showing up, regardless of how you feel, what you think, what the thoughts about yourself are, that is falling in love with the process. That is falling in love with the process. And the thing is, the corporate world is so task oriented, it's so goal oriented, that it's very easy to lose yourself, because once you get to that goal, it's like, well, now what do I do? So there are a lot of ways that you can go about this, but self-introspection, I think, is a really good one. And, we can slide into the subject too. Stop blaming others for what's happening in your life. In the corporate world, in your personal life, once you go out the street, it's like, notice how what other people trigger in you, or how we use it in more like colloquial terms, like how someone makes you feel. I'm using quotation marks, right. Because nobody can make you feel anyway. It's something that just happens. But then it's like, let's explore this emotion a little bit. Why is this person detonating this feeling inside me? I
would love to expand on that, because I think even people listening probably feel offended and were triggered, even like if they have a sore spot, right? If they were recently told something and somebody made them feel a certain way, And they're like, well, it's still like, it was obnoxious. Like it can be obnoxious of the person commenting to you. We're not just right. We're not saying that, you know, that maybe you are being spoken to in a derogatory way or in a certain way. Right. But like, so where's the line, right? How does someone like decide, is that my responsibility to respond in a certain way? You know, how am I supposed to, you know, manage my emotions better? Or like, are there times where it's just like, well, that person's like not great and that was not right, and you know, I'm gonna move on from it. Like, you know, I don't know. Am I making sense? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yes, yes, you are making. Yeah, no. Yeah, you are making total sense, and that is a phenomenal question. I think it really, it's a practice of gauging. This is what I've discovered. It's a process of gauging and being like, okay, because sometimes, you know, we have our own drama. Like we have our own internal stories. We have our own internal, like, places where we want to slide into the victim mentality, where we want to slide into this space of like, oh, poor me. That's the first reaction. And I always tell people, I'm like, I never miss this step. Like I never deprive myself from feeling a victim instantly, because it's a shock, right? It's like, let's say, I don't know, let's focus on your audience, right? They're with the diet culture. So let's say that somebody has just been like doing their best and, you know, eating very mindfully and like finally getting a really good relationship with food. And then, you know, the aunt or the uncle or one of, you know, a baby boomer comes along because they always feel like they can just say shit and it's okay. They make a comment about your body or about how you're not eating X, Y, and Z or whatever. That can be a huge trigger.
Yes.
And I think that if this is something that the person who is being triggered, let's just call her Anna for the sake of like, you know, ease. And Anna feels triggered. I think that Anna in that moment can take a step forward and say, you know what? I don't know. Aunt, all my
Susie.
Relatives are coming up.
And so. Susie, I don't know. But guys, it's not a real life
I have a relative.
Although it's very real that it can happen. We're not using real life names. So Aunt Susie.
Yeah, Aunt Susie comes along, and if Aunt Susie ever hears this, it's not about you, just the name. Aunt Susie comes along, and I can tell her, you know what, Aunt Susie, I know you don't mean anything by this comment. I know you're just being you, but the truth is that I've really struggled in the past with X, Y, and Z. So I would really appreciate it if next time you feel inclined to share something in regards to this subject, you ask for my permission first, because I did not give consent for you to have an opinion about my ways of dealing with, you know, food in this scenario. And that is that's a very frightening thing to do, right? Because it requires vulnerability from our part. But I'm a big believer, if you want more from people, you have to lean in and give more and set the example, because I can assure you that if you talk to Aunt Susie that way, she's not going to be like, unless she's like a narcissist or like cannot connect with like this emotion.
Which there are out there, which in that sense, it's like don't even waste your breath. And then why would you take someone's word so seriously when they clearly, you know, have a few screws loose?
Yeah. But even in that scenario, I would say in that moment, you're you're vouching for yourself. You're standing up for yourself. So it's not about Aunt Susie. It's not about Uncle Bob. It's not about anyone else. It's about you telling the world, like, actually, you cannot come into my field. Right. You cannot come into my personal space and say shit like that, because I am not okay with it. So if I'm not okay with it, then I don't want it in my field, because
you're not receiving it. I think part of it too, I do believe, like, I don't know if you help people with this or can speak on this, but I hate to say this, but I think people who get criticism and get commented on, it's almost like they're not putting up that shield. Like it's like they create almost, and I hate to say this, but I think that's what you're saying, like the emotional responsibility. It's almost like you're putting out this energy that's saying like, attack me, or that's saying like, make fun of me, or that's saying like, you know what, I can't explain it, but I just, unfortunately, I do feel like there are certain people that are more likely to get targeted per se, to, or maybe bullying or commented on, and doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it appropriate. I'm not saying that at all, but I feel like they might be putting out a certain type of energy that says like, okay, go for it. You know what I mean? And I think when you're clear and you're strong in your convictions of who you are and how you show up, you don't even admit energy that allows people to come at you that way. Is that, am I off? Like,
yes, no.
This is a hard conversation to have, right? Because for especially someone in the victim mindset, they might be like, what do you mean? No, that person, I don't want to be made fun of. I don't want to be commented. You know what I mean? But like, I think there is a certain responsibility that we have to take of like, and what am I putting out, you know, or am I looking for it? Am I fishing for it? You know?
Yes. Subconsciously we are. Because we have this programming that if we are victims, we don't have to be responsible for our shit. So what happens is it's so much easier to point the finger outward instead of pointing 3 back in, because then it's like, oh my gosh, the guilt, the shame, like all these undesirable, all of these like prescription emotions, we can call them, right? Because there's a prescription for anxiety, for, depression, like all these things. And it's like, you know what, if we really just learn to love all parts of ourselves, and we knew that every single human, I know this because I work in the field, right? I know there's dark and I know there's light. So when I have dark thoughts come up, I think it's hilarious. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go and kill this person right now. Ha ha ha. Because I know I'm not going to do it.
Right.
I know I'm not going to do it. And I don't feed that. I actually just laugh about it because it's not a part of what I consider for it to be a part of my identity. But that's a whole other story in and of itself, and another podcast slot for that one. But I think that what you said is really, really important. If you're being triggered by this conversation that Tony and I are having, that's enough right now. Like that is enough to get you activated and to make you question yourself. Like, why is this bothering me so much? Like, why are they saying that it's not, Uncle Ken's or Uncle Bob's or Aunt Susie's responsibility? The thing is, we're not here to educate others.
Right.
And I love this phrase by Byron Katie. She says, minding your own business is a full-time job. And that applies in this type of dynamic where, you know what, I'm doing this for myself. And if that person has a problem with it, then that's not my problem.
Right. Because like we really can't, we can't control anybody else. So it's a waste of time and energy to think that we can control how someone decides to treat us, right? Our only responsibility is how we choose to respond to that, or what we allow, and setting boundaries. Like there's things that can be put in place, but at the end of the day, like you are not responsible of how other people treat you. You're just responsible for how you respond to it.
Exactly. Wow. And I'll share a personal story because I think these are always very empowering, and they're very, I personally like to hear personal stories whenever I hear podcasts because it humanizes the guest, right? Yes. I'm not an all-knowing guru. I'm a human, just like you who's listening to this. I am a human being, and I go through a lot of things that you experience, but I just have the tools to manage everything and come back to this place of joy, of excitement, of love, right? So when I worked in the food service industry for a while. I had my own business, all that good stuff. And one day I was going on my way to work and I was having this conversation with my mom. We were, I was driving in the car, blah, blah, blah. And she was telling me something about a cousin of ours. And I made a comment about it. And then she just like snapped back at me. And she was like, well, Anna, you haven't made like the best decisions in your life either. And and started throwing in my face like something that was really painful. And then she was like, okay, but we'll talk later. I have to go. I'm going into this session. And I was like, okay. And I was just like, I felt like a garbage can. You know, I felt like she had just dumped all this shit on me. And I was like, what? And I was like, what do I do with this? Like, I didn't, you know, in my mind, I was like, I didn't ask for this, but there was a part there. Like, I believe now when I see everything in retrospect, I believe that I do subconsciously ask for everything that I am getting. Right. And this may be a hard pill to swallow. You don't have to swallow it now if it's not available to you. But I am a big believer of this. So in that moment, I grabbed my phone and I sent her a 14-minute long voice note. And I was like, I don't like that you did that. And of course, like, this was so fast, like the process of me like figuring out like how I was going to send it to her and this and that. And I was really angry. So in my brain, I was thinking, my mom may be like, how dare you disrespect, you know, that whole, like, I'm your mother, how dare you? She's not that type of person, but I was like, I don't know how she's going to react to what I'm saying to her, but I cannot let this moment go by not saying anything because I'm the daughter. And I have to say something because it's time for me to stand up for how this makes me feel. It's time to stand up for me. So in that moment, I risked the relationship that I had with my mom, which was an okay relationship back then. Now we have an amazing relationship. But this was a pivotal moment in a relationship because I told her, I was like, when you say these things, it hurts me. And you are hurting me. You are hurting me when you talk to me like this. You are hurting me when you bring up this topic. You are hurting me. So I just went on and on and on. I don't remember, obviously, how many things I said, but it was a 14-minute voice note. And she responded back. She was like, Anna, I am so sorry that I hurt you. And I just sobbed. I was like, oh, because, you know, a lot of the times my mom would be like, Anna, you know, just like start like, I'm Mexican and so is she. So we speak in Spanish and she's like, ya suéltame, you know, like, ya suéltame is just like, let me go. Like, just like go do your own thing. You can't like blame me for everything. And I'm like, Mom, you are my universe. Like you are my mother. Like you cannot just say detach from me because that's never going to happen. I literally came from you. Like there was a core. I am like, and I told her that it's so unfair when you tell me that because you are my mother. Right. And it makes me feel like a piece of trash when you say like that I don't feel seen. I don't feel validated. I don't feel like I am your daughter. And that shifted so many things in our relationship. She owned like being that mother that I wanted her to be. And we are super, super deep in our personal development journey. She's a therapist, like her practice has grown. My practice has grown. We've grown as people, as women, as mother, as daughter, as friend, as everything. And we talk about a lot of deep stuff that actually, you know, like we've been complimented on our relationship. Like, wow, I wish, you know, my mom and I had that type of relationship. And then I started thinking, I was like, yeah, we do have this relationship, but it's not because it just happened.
Right.
It was intentional.
Right. And I think we need to highlight the fact that I think a lot of people are afraid to speak up because they're afraid they're going to rock their relationship or lose that person or something's going to change. And I think the reality is yes, something is going to change. However, if it's the right person, if you feel safe enough and they receive that, and then it opens up and it makes you guys stronger. And I think you really don't have anything to lose, right? Because the relationship itself probably isn't great if you're feeling uncomfortable being able to share or speak your truth. So the only thing that can either happen is you decide to distance yourself from that relationship because maybe it wasn't received and now you're no longer wasting your time or pretending that something is what it isn't, or it's only going to get better and you're going to just continue to grow and be able to to speak more openly and communicate better. And I think that's like so powerful. So I think part of where I'm getting at, and I think this is what you're saying too, Anna, is like when you take emotional responsibility, it actually is very empowering. You know, It really gives you, so part of that can be scary, right? Because now it is your responsibility, right? But part of that is like, well, you also get to choose and you also get, to feel like in charge a little bit more.
Yes. Absolutely. You get to feel like life is happening in your favor, not against you. And I think I'm getting chills right now because I think that something that society doesn't do because it's not it doesn't serve them, right? Like if the media started showing people like, videos of puppies and like, oh my gosh, we have a polar bear who just had a baby. Look how amazing, like that, what it does, it stimulates the brain to secrete oxytocin. And that is the hormone of love, like when a mom breastfeeds or when you have a hug, it's that like loving nature, you're in peace, you're grounded, you're embodied. That doesn't serve consumerism. That doesn't serve, the army, right? So I'm touching a lot of taboo subjects because I love to go there. I love to always just like, be constantly defying the status quo because you don't have to live your life the way you were taught or the way you see it on TV or whatever, a garbage TV, if you're watching it, like stop watching all that stuff because what you are consuming, not just through food and beverages, but also through your eyes, the conversations that you have, the type of television that you watch, do you read? What type of music do you listen? What type of words do you say to yourself? What type of people do you hang around? That has a lot to do with it. So because we are constantly being bombarded by fear, worry, anxiety, we are still to this day in a world where we have the ability and the capacity to live like kings and queens, for a lack of a better reframe. If that triggers you, then pick something else that's cool. We are still living in survival mode, Toni. A lot of us cannot have meaningful relationships, cannot enjoy life, cannot really live. Yeah. We are just running on fumes and we're on that hamster wheel. And then when people retire, they die because they're depressed, they're anxious, they don't know what to do with their lives.
Yeah.
So you touched a very important point here because when you take responsibility for your emotions, when you say, you know what, I listened to Toni's episode with Anna and I decided I'm not going to watch the news anymore. Watch your life transform. Mm-hmm. Watch your life transform. Like, you are always going to have a friend who watches the news. I promise.
Yeah, you open up Facebook or Instagram for 5 seconds. Yeah. You know what the most recent thing is. Yeah. Trust me, I don't watch the news. Everyone tells me what's going on. I figure it out.
Exactly.
And then if I feel like I need clarity, then I'll like look it up. Then I'll do a little Google search or whatever. But I haven't watched the news in literally probably since high school, where my mom used to put it on to help me wake up in the morning, which was not a good idea. That will not make you want to wake up. That's like,
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, this is, oh my God, this is so powerful. This is so good. So, okay, you've touched on, and I really think we need to speak on this a little bit more. It's true. Like everything we see and hear, depending on if we're not being selective, what we decide to look, watch or listen, it is usually very negative. And I love what you said, like we're living in fight or flight, we're living in scarcity. It's hard to thrive if you're just trying to survive, right? Like, so what is the secret sauce or the secret formula? Like because I know you talk everything love, right? Everything love coach. So it's like, is love the secret ingredient? Like how do we now shift to, thriving rather than just surviving and getting out of that fight or flight?
Yeah, I really do think that love is the secret to everything. And it's not even a secret. It's something that's so, the concept of love is just so washed up. It's become trendy. Sometimes we confuse love with codependency. So I think there's a lot of confusion of what love truly is. And love is multifaceted, just like we are. I think that love is truly a holographic concept. It has so many dimensions. There's so many parts to it. But I really think that one of the truest things one of the highest forms of love towards ourselves is commitment to the process. And that includes discipline with yourself, with like, I'm going to do this because I've decided that this is who I want to be. So whether my body's saying, oh, I'm tired, or my brain's saying, we'll start tomorrow, your brain and your body already have a dynamic. They have a relationship where they leverage each other out. So if you're bringing in a new concept, right? Like, there's like this really healthy alternative that we found, and the brain's like, what for? Like, we're already doing okay. And the body's like, you know what? I don't even know if this healthy alternative is going to be like, it's going to sit well. So your body and your brain will resist you. And I think that this is something that's super, super, super important for people to know. When you make a change in your life, especially in your belief system, your brain and your body will resist it because they are already wired. They're already wired. And every time that you did something new, that you, what do you call it? That you added on a new habit, the brain cells were wiring together. So there was this connection with the body and the brain. So now you're asking them to, stop the rewiring of something that has been wiring and firing for decades. That can take time. So there's so many things, Tony, so many things. Like there's patience, there's, being forgiving towards yourself, towards others, being very compassionate, kind, loving. And this is something that we don't practice in society a lot, but it is preached. Seeing the best in every person that you meet. And the reason why we don't do this is because we don't trust ourselves. Why? Because we're always getting bombarded. Whether somebody passed down a belief, never trust X, Y, and Z, they're traitors, what you see in the movies, all these things, what we're consuming and the teachings and the beliefs that have been passed on to us. But I really do think that once you learn to trust yourself, and this is a process, I am very aware that I cannot really just give you a list and expect you to do it and it'll work. It takes time because every person is different. Every person will walk down a different path. And the important thing to remind yourself is that there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. Your life is like the decisions that you make on the road that you're on, you have a GPS, and the GPS is always rerouting. So if you took a step to the left and let's just say, quote unquote, it would have been easier or better for you to do it, for you to take a right turn, you can take the left turn, and then the GPS will guide you. The intuition, aka the GPS, will guide you to go to the right. So This is it. This is life. It's the journey. It's the process. So I think the more important question is, how do you want to spend your life?
Right. Yeah.
And who do you want to be? Who do you want to be in this life? There is time. There's time. But the thing is, we take time for granted because
that's what I wanted to kind of speak about next, because I 100% hear you. You can't screw this up, right? Meaning like every whatever direction you go, it's going to point you in the direction you're meant to be. But there are paths that are going to take significantly longer for you to figure it out versus like, for example, I think so many people, when they do, when they join one of our programs, and I'm sure you probably hear the same thing on your end, they almost are like, why didn't I do this sooner? Like, I wish I started this sooner, right? It's like, well, your gut and your intuition was actually probably telling you to do it sooner, but for whatever reason, you chose not to listen to it. So I know I can relate when it came to quitting my full-time job at the time and doing my business full-time, probably could have done that sooner. Right. And it's like, and I would have been ahead further. Right. And I kept getting the messages, the tugs, and then I kind of just distracted, got more jobs, like pulled, you know what I mean? And so, yes. So like, I guess what advice would you have to someone who, is getting the message, it's intuitively coming to them, or either it's getting their message intuitively coming to them and then how to take action on that, or maybe feeling so detached from love, so detached from clarity, like how do they then tap into their creativity, their intuition, or whatever it is to make it become more clear of where their next step should be?
Yeah. I think that I mean, you're asking great questions, by the way. So thank you. I think that if you know someone that has what you want, or lives the life that you would like to live, or has a faith that you want to have, reach out to them, whether it's a paid service or not, and just be like, I want to be in your circle. I want to be in your world. Like, teach me how to live the way you live. And I've done that with friends. I've done that with coaches. I've done that paid and non-paid. And it is a beautiful blend of both, right? Because, and I mean, every coaching has their own way. I'm a coach that goes all out, right? That's why I charge what I charge, because you have my support. I only coach 5 people a month. My energy is not scattered or all over the place, right. But you have constant contact with me. Mm-hmm. Like, I am on Voxer with you. I am on the calls with you. I am there. And a lot of times, this is the really cool thing about like the energy. When clients know that you're there, they don't feel compelled to keep reaching out the whole time.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know if that happens to you, but.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
And it's great.
They're it's just, and also too, because they trust that when you do speak, you're going to get all your questions answered. And they also learn they learn that they are capable as well. And that they too usually can answer their own questions once you give them the tools, like how you do with like helping them be more introspective. Often, maybe in the beginning, they need more of your support, but as they start to kind of learn and develop the skills and habits and they have the tools, it's like they're actually fully capable of doing it on their own. And then you just become like kind of the extra layer of support.
Yeah. Yeah. And they come and they tell you, oh my gosh, this happened.
I'm so proud of myself and I'm so excited. Yeah. You celebrate more than, need to like kind of figure it out.
Yes. Absolutely. So I really do think that is a great way to start. And if that doesn't feel right, then it really just depends on your current belief system. Like if you're somebody who's very religious or spiritual or whatever, I like to ask God, the universe, source, however you want to call it. Or sometimes it's just speaking it out into life. Like, show me what I need to see. Show me where I'm flaking. Show me where I'm not holding myself responsible. Show me where I still need to, what I need to lean into a little bit more. Show me the way of love. And if this seems like too far-fetched, just do it. That is one of the things, like, just do it. Even if you don't believe in it right now, because your brain is like, there's no way that it can be that easy. We make it harder than it is because our brain is like, no, because if it would have been easy, then it would have already come. Yeah. But it actually is easy.
It actually is, though. Like, because I'm reflecting even on my own journey in areas where I'm an avoider. I'm a big avoider. I'm working on it in therapy, so I can't really speak on it right now. We'll speak about it once I'm healed. Right now, I'm still healing. So, but I will avoid things until they're a catastrophe. Like, so I even talk about it in my book. I named myself a planter versus like bouncers. A planter, it's like you'll stay in something for so long with hopes that it's working. It's like you won't admit that it's that bad. And it's like, but the second I've taken responsibility and have decided that I am no longer accepting this as part of who I am in my life, it is that shift. Opportunities present themselves, things happen, people, it's a change. Nothing changed other than how I decided to see it and how I decided to decide I was going to be. That's the only change. So the sooner that you like stop avoiding things, stop pretending that everything's fine. It's okay to admit when stuff is not fine. It's actually, you need to admit that it's really that bad and you're deciding to change. I think where people, I know for me, where I'm afraid of admitting something is a problem, it's like because I know on the other side of that is having to take responsibility to change it or to do something about it. And sometimes I just don't have the bandwidth or whatever it is, or maybe I'm holding on to hope or whatnot. But literally though, it can be that easy. It just has to come from the awareness and then declaring that you're going to change or do something and not even do anything other than look at it differently. Like that's, that's what's crazy. Yeah. It's like, you don't have to even take action sometimes. Sometimes it's literally just deciding that I'm no longer receiving this and I'm choosing this instead. And like you said, speaking it out loud, and you can move mountains that way.
Yes. And you know what, you said something about like, once I'm completely healed. And I think a lot of us have this misconception. And I myself, sometimes subconsciously, I think we all think about it. Like, once I am fully healed, then I am worthy of X, Y, and Z. So it's one of, it's this.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, you are so welcome. And I do it with a lot of love because I mean, you and I and everyone watching this, or excuse me, listening to this, we are worthy. We are worthy right now, like right this moment, right this instant. And I just finished reading a book by Matthew Hussey. He is a relationship coach. And he says, believe in your own value and everything in life will follow. That was the end of the book. And I was like, I have to write this. And I literally pulled it up so I could read it for you. He says, stop waiting and start creating. We're so passive sometimes. And it's like, you know, I grew up in a very, not like my household, but like our culture, the magazine culture is so religious and it's like Catholic, lots of shame, lots of guilt, all these things. And it's like the things people do in like to avoid taking responsibility is insane to me. It's crazy to me. And they are passive because they're like, no, the Lord is going to provide. Jesus is going to provide. And I have nothing against these deities. I think it's great if you follow them, if they are a support in your life. But there's a way, right? We're not beggars.
Right.
We're actually creators.
Right.
And if we truly believe that God's source, whatever, is our Father, our Creator, our whatever, and I'm getting a little bit into this because I think it's a very important subject, then you are an extension of this force. Right. You are not below. You are not above. You are just as magnificent, as amazing as this force. You are an extension of them, right? Just like, imagine like you have your father's last name, right? You have your mother's eyes, you have whatever, like you're an extension of them. Right. And if we don't own who we are, we can get really, really lost. And I think there is this fear of owning our greatness and saying, you know, like times when you're really tired, when I'm really tired, I forget sometimes, and I'm in this work, but I have to remind myself how powerful our words are.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I need to start cleaning my energy. I need to start like cleaning, like morning and evening, because we're constantly, you know, absorbing so many things throughout the day. And I'm just going to speak it, you know, whatever does not belong to me, leave my body, leave my field right this moment.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised. I mean, I am surprised. I'm like, that was so easy and so effective. And I feel lighter. Yeah. It was a matter of seconds. So it's just reminding ourselves about these things.
Yeah. Oh, so powerful. This is so good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything I feel that we have to end, but because I have another call, but this has been so great. Is there anything that we may have missed, things you might want to like kind of leave our listeners with before we wrap up and let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm sure we missed a bajillion things when I listened to the podcast. And like, oh, maybe this, maybe that. But it feels perfect to me right now. It feels like we touched a little bit on several things. And if you have more questions, yes, please reach out to me. I love having conversations with people who are anywhere in the journey, but that have a desire to have this emotional responsibility, right? Like I'm tired of being a victim. I'm tired of things, quote unquote, happening to me. I'm sick of myself, basically, or I'm tired of like, you know, this like person that I am right now. And that's okay because we're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing. So I would love to hear from you. My Instagram is Ana. It's ANA, the letter C as in cat, and then Jones, JONES, and then the letter G. I try to include all of my lineage there. even on Instagram. Yeah. And just send me a DM. Tell me that you listened to the podcast and that you loved it. I'm kidding. Only if you did, be honest. Feedback, everything is great. And if I can leave people with something, is just do it. Just decide that you want to be where you want to be in life, because I think that sometimes we're embarrassed that we are ashamed. Like, how dare I dream so big? I invite you to dream as big as you possibly can. And just go all out. Trust that it's going to happen. You don't need to know the exact steps. Just know that that life is going to lead you in that way, and that this is something that your soul has to experience in this lifetime, it will happen. It will happen. And life can be beautiful and tormenting and ridiculously painful at times. But, when you know that you have the power to shift and create, it feels a lot more hopeful, and there's a lot more resilience in the process of it all.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, so great. Thank you so much for being here. Those who are listening, make sure you give Anna a follow, take a screenshot of this episode, share it on your story, and tag me and tag her on Instagram. If you're not already subscribed to the Tips with Tony podcast, definitely hit the subscribe button. A new episode comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. And when you're subscribed, you don't miss a beat. All right. That's it from us today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.